All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Writers Group panel. We have Teresa, Bobby, Jared, Patricia, and Matt. I think this is the same lineup we had earlier today, so y'all should all be very comfortable speaking with each other. All right, so I think this is actually, do y'all have another, is there another writing panel y'all are on later today?
This is my last for the day, yeah.
This is my last panel.
Yep, okay, I was thinking it was the last one. So, all right, well, this is Writers Group, and I will turn it over to you guys now.
So of us, how I guess who all is actively participating in a writers group at the moment?
I'm not at the moment, no.
I'm in two. They're both in person. I find that I really appreciate in-person writers groups more than online. We have had a couple of Zoom meetings, which is almost the same. I've also run writers groups in the past when I worked at a bookstore and at a local library. So I have a lot of experience with in-person writers groups, not so much with the online ones.
I was in a writers group for about 2 months, and then all the chaos happened. So we have not met since.
You were just getting started and you had to quit.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits of writers groups as you guys see it?
Well, of course, I've been in two different formats of writers group. One of them, the main benefit, the main focus was camaraderie and encouragement and just being around other writers, networking, talking with them. And the other kind, the kind I'm actively involved in now, is it's got that, but it's also in-depth critiquing, criticism, copy editing, and line editing of each other's works on a bi-weekly basis, which at this stage in my career is providing a lot more benefit than just the old style which I ran, which is the, hey, we're all writers, rah, rah, rah. And and of course, there's the world's biggest writing group, which I've also been heavily involved in the past, Nanowrimo, which I always encourage anyone, especially starting out as a writer, to do that every year until it gets boring. As soon as it gets boring, then you can move on. but I don't know. What about the rest of y'all?
I like the instant feedback for when you. We would read, the last group I was in, we would actually read aloud in front of each other, and that instant feedback, that gut reaction, knee jerk, that's what they thought as soon as they heard it. I got a lot of good use out of that, of, seeing what people, reacted to and what they did and what they didn't understand. And I got a lot of good reactions from that helped me, in the second draft of the story. And then basically like what you said there, the camaraderie, the cheerleading, the helping each other, boosting each other up and keeping each other going, because there becomes that little friendly competition of, well, if I know he's going to write something this week. If I don't write something this week, I'm never going to hear the end of it. And it kind of helps motivate you, I think, and so a good group, I think is good for all that, of keeping you going, keeping you writing. I would not want to be part of one that made me feel like crap every time I left.
No, it's got to be a positive experience.
Yeah.
And I think there's a writers group for everybody, whatever you're looking for and whatever your needs are. There's a huge one called Critters, and but it's very impersonal. I couldn't get into it because you don't really have a relationship with the people that you're critiquing their stuff, they're critiquing yours, and you don't really know them that much. I had another writers group where I knew the people. We formed from a workshop at Dragon Con, and so that was very good. but Critters was kind of scary. I did it for a little while, and I got some good feedback, but I wasn't quite as comfortable, especially not giving feedback to people that I didn't know how they were going to take it,
Mhm.
and I didn't know that much about them.
Speaking of NaNoWriMo, this past November, we had a local group that met usually at a coffee shop, and it wasn't the same people every week, maybe 4 to 6 different people, and we actually had a weekly writing group centered around making progress on whatever we were working on for NaNoWriMo. I found that really beneficial. Number one, it was something to look forward to. It wasn't a long-term commitment. Made some friends out of it. The format, we usually met for about a couple hours. We would chat for a few minutes, and then we'd spend 15 or 20 minutes total silence and just writing. It didn't matter what we wrote. It didn't matter how much we wrote, but we're just going to take this time. We're going to write. And of course, we'd stop 5 or 10 minutes, chat again, do another sprint, stop, chat again, do another sprint for about a couple hours. But it was very productive, and I thought it trained me to write faster. I found with every sprint I got a little bit faster. I got a little bit more comfortable with the notion of I can do this because I'm fairly new to this writing thing, and I think most of y'all are probably more advanced than I am. So I got used to the idea that I can write fast, I can write well, and I don't have to spend a month writing a chapter and refine it I can just let the energy come out. But that camaraderie helped me do that, because I felt the need to keep up with everybody else.
Yeah, I think too, I find that in my regular life, I'm not around creative people that often. I also, I do think when I have those opportunities to hang out with creative people, whether it's in a group or at a convention or even what we've been doing today, I'm talking to creative people, and that kind of, gets my creative juices flowing a little bit. And I'm assuming if that's the same for everybody else, and talking to other writers understand the frustrations that you're going through, or not, or on the other side, they understand things that go well for you that if you tell someone else, they're like, I don't get it. But you understand the things that we go through because we're all going through similar type things. So I love that. I love that sense of community that doing things like this helps us have.
Yeah, when I came to Atlanta, I hadn't been writing for a few years, so I started looking for writing groups on Meetup here, and I tried a couple looking for a format that would help me and keep me going. And where I landed, there's a group called Decatur, Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Scribes, of whom Jeff, who is one of the audience members down there, is also a member. Hi, Jeff. And it's a really brilliant format that this group has, and I'll share it just so anyone else who wants to start a writing group can do this. Each meeting, we meet once every 2 weeks, and there's also like a Saturday group, which is not the same people necessarily, but I haven't been to that one. But we meet every 2 weeks. Before the virus, we were meeting at a restaurant, and now a really loud, hot, crowded, noisy restaurant where the waiters are interrupted for 75 minutes. And now that we've switched to Zoom, I'm not sure that we're going to go back. But it's we cap the attendance like 10 people. If you're going to attend this week, you can post up to, not exceeding 4,000 words of whatever it is you're working on Google Docs, and you share it and open for comments. You post a link to it maybe 3 or 4 days before our meeting so people can go in, and then we spend those 3 or 4 days reading everyone else's work, commenting, asking questions, saying this works, I really like this doesn't, what does this pronoun mean? I don't understand where this pronoun is going, and all this kind of stuff. And then, so we kind of do the copy edit stuff virtually, so that when we talk in person, we just take everyone's story, go around the circle, and everyone talks about the big picture ideas that affected them about the story and questions and concerns. So you get both the kind of like line by line, you missed a word here, nitpicky critique online without having to take the time in person to do that. Of course, if we have 10 people attend and 10 people make submissions, we can go from 7 o'clock till midnight sometimes. But we don't have a bedtime, do we? We're grown up. So. But it's a really, really effective tool. Plus, it also puts that kind of, and also one thing which writers groups do is you get to put your work in front of people who don't share the same kind of writing mindset. So like, for instance, my current project I'm sharing with them is a science fiction space horror story. And I'm sharing this and hearing back from people who are writing young adult, writing steampunk, writing straight up supernatural horror, people writing fairy stories and epic fantasy. So I get that kind of feedback from these different, from people whose heads are in a different creative space coming back at mine and saying what works and what does not. And so it's a great test audience and sounding board. And while I enjoyed the groups where you read aloud, get instant reaction, I find this kind of format is a lot more meaningful feedback than I got before in the previous groups that I was in.
Nice. I like that idea too. Plus, when not everybody's writing crime fiction or not everybody's writing sci-fi, hearing how the other authors are telling their stories sometimes can impact. Oh, you know what? That's an interesting way it solves a problem I didn't realize I had, or how this writer tackles this topic, or how they write something. You can still, even though it's not your genre, you can still pick up cool tips and tricks.
Right. You see which tools are in the other genre toolboxes. You're like, I can use that here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Meetup is a good way to find groups. If you're looking for an in-person group, also check local libraries. Yours and any surrounding ones. I was in a great library writing group for several years before we moved here. And bookstores too will sometimes have them. And even if you can't find one, you can start one. Has anybody ever started a writing group before?
Oh yeah.
I never started one.
Well,
and if I know if you go in your local coffee shops too, a lot of them have them, or they're there and they will let you know about them as well.
Yeah. Since you asked if we started one, and since we're doing this for the Hoover Library Sci-Fi Fest, I feel compelled to advertise for the Hoover Library Write Club, which I started back in 2008, and then I handed it off to other people who've taken it and run with it. But yeah, Hoover Library has I think they still meet once a month, and sometimes it's the format you bring your own work, you read it, and you get instant feedback. Sometimes they bring in authors or people to talk on the craft or do workshops. And a cool thing the Hoover Library does once a year is they'll do flash fiction night, where members of the Write Club are invited to submit 1,000-word short stories and read them in front of the public, or I guess now virtually they have to do it. But it's if you're in the Hoover or area or anywhere you can drive to Hoover, or where you can access Hoover with your internet now, I highly recommend you check out the Hoover Library's Write Club here in Decatur.
I've just recently started attending that one this year. I think Teresa does too. And it's, I'm here in Tuscaloosa, and there's one here, but it's positive only. There's no real critique. It's just a lot of cheerleading, which is great. They're very supportive. But the Write Club, people feel more comfortable actually giving you criticism, which is what you need to be better. So I definitely recommend that too to anybody who's interested.
I'm also in Tuscaloosa.
Hi. You should come to the Tuscaloosa Writers and Illustrators Guild, TWIG. That's the one here. So
I should.
yeah, if you need some cheerleading, we've got you.
That's a good acronym. I never could come up with a good acronym for one.
Now I have done over in the past few years. I have done that where I have been the guest that comes into a writing group and does a presentation or a kind of what we're doing here, a Q&A or that kind of thing. And that's been interesting too, because it's a different audience than if you were at, just a convention panel or a bookstore doing some kind of event. These are people, they're more interested in how you do things. They're more interested in the talking about craft, which is very very different than if I'm just doing a presentation trying to sell a book. I'm not actually there trying to sell them anything. I'm just there. We're talking about what it is to do the work, to be a writer, et cetera. And I find those enjoyable. So I do that whenever, I've got invited to a few local ones, and that's been fun. And so if you haven't done that as a guest speaker, I would highly recommend it. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of fun.
Go ahead, Teresa.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, ask if anybody had any horror stories from writers groups where something wasn't good, wasn't great, and how did you deal with it?
I haven't really. The one that I was in, where I lived before, the core group had been together a long time, so we were really comfortable with each other. There was a lot of shouting, but we all loved each other. But I mean, we were yelling and talking over each other, and anybody who didn't like that would be run off pretty quickly. But some people would stick around. And there was one man who, he came to a lot of meetings before he shared. We gave him some criticism when he did share, but it was kind. I mean, there's an etiquette to these things. And he took great offense to it and left. And we were all very sorry to see him go because we liked him and we liked what he was writing. But some people just don't take criticism well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like an ugly scene or anything.
Right.
He was just, he didn't come back.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
one year we had an attendee to Write Club. It came to like 3 or 4 of the things, and the only thing she ever brought to share was one paragraph that she'd written about why she liked to write. But she was very free with criticism for everyone else's work, but she never, I was about to have to speak to her when she just stopped coming altogether. But yeah, with one thing with these kind of writers groups, if you decide to start one and run one, you need to think about like how many people the group can accommodate. Because one problem I had with the Write Club at Hoover Library was one particular year, I don't know why our attendance just exploded, which as a librarian, we were like, wow, look at all this attendance, because that's, the same as sales in the bookstores, people walking through the door that you can count there. But we eventually got too many people. We had some meeting where 50 people showed up, and you can't have everyone read and get critiqued on if there's 50 people. So we tried breaking up into smaller groups, but it was just so loud that no one could hear anybody. So that's why if anyone out there wants to like start a library group, not library group, if anyone's out there thinking of starting a writing group, think about like how many people do you feel your format can accommodate, and try and be firm with that.
I in the one I was in early on was the one where we were doing the reading aloud and stuff, and I had a kind of it's not a negative, it's a positive that happened. It helped me kind of get over some of the nervousness I felt of speaking in front of people. Mm-hmm. I have to have a visual aid for this. I mean, I would read. I don't have a piece of paper handy, but yeah, there we go. I would read in those early classes like this. And we've probably all seen the people that hide behind the paper to read. And there was one lady in the class who started sitting next to me. And as I would hold up to read, she would reach over and manually like hold my arm down. So I had to look at the people. So eventually, just to get her to stop doing that, I just started reading it and looking at people, and it helped me also get past some of that fear of reading in front of people, fear of putting yourself out there to a group, because most of these people at that time I didn't know any of them, so it was it helped with that shyness of reading in front of people and getting out there, that now I can do stuff like this or panels at physical cons or whatever. And a lot of that came from the fact that I can now look at people, when I read to them or when I talk to them, I can look straight at them. So that was a nice positive that came from a writer group.
I was in a writers group, and we had a problem. We would share before the group, a chapter or whatever we were critiquing, and we had a member who wanted to totally rewrite what you had written in their voice. And you couldn't, you know, and during the whole critique, they wanted to take over everything. And it got to be where you didn't even want to meet because it was a problem. So
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Someone saying that kind of like, yeah, the alpha personality taking over. Yeah.
Did
It
you
seems
deal
to
with
me
that?
that-
Did you have to ask them to leave?
I think they did. I wasn't the, you know, the one in charge of it, but eventually they did leave. And it was, we were a sci-fi and fantasy group, and the person was writing very flowery literary style, old literary style. And it just, you know, you'd be going, okay, no.
But still, from my experience in writing groups, these kind of occurrences aren't the norm by any means. Vast majority of people that I've been in, all the groups I've been in, have been warm, open, giving as far as sharing their own stuff, and you know, really helpful and supportive as far as critiquing and showing what works and what does not in my own stuff. So it's a really good experience if you can find the right group. That's the thing, you got to find the right group that fits you and where you are and your personality.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of good information, you know, from writers that were at, especially when I started, who were at a much, you know, more advanced stage than I was just starting out. I learned a lot of things. Like one of the best advice that I got early was about marketing and promoting your own work. And like you need to start learning how to do this now because it's so very important. And it's only gotten even more so as publishers do less and less, you know, promoting of books. And books now have longer shelf life thanks to ebooks and print on demand. That learning how to promote helps us not only when the book comes out, but in some cases 10, 20 years you're still promoting books that came out 10, 20 years earlier. So finding ways to do that was very important. And that was advice I got from meeting a published author who was a part of our group.
We just had a question in the chat from Madeline. Do you ever look for groups specifically outside of your preferred genre to glean new ideas? One that I would point out and I would recommend to people is, even if you're not a romance writer, go attend a meeting or three of the Romance Writers America, of the local chapter, wherever you are, of the Romance Writers of America, because that group is not just about the craft and the writing, but they are heavily into the business aspects of writing and the networking aspects of writing. And you don't have to be a romance writer to join either. So that one, you know, if you want to keep coming, there are annual dues and everything. It's a professional organization, but there is just they have a wealth of information there, even if that's not your genre, just about the sheer business and networking and marketing and getting your book read by people.
I would also suggest if you write crime stuff, Southern Sisters in Crime is another good. I know there's a local chapter here called Southern Sisters in Crime, and they will take men. I mean, it's you know, even though it's sisters in there, they will take men, but they're kind of the same way. It's you know, it's an organization. You pay some dues if you join, but there's a lot of information about the business of writing. And I think most of us, when we get started as writers, we're not thinking about the business side of things. I know I certainly wasn't. You know, I thought I write a book, a publisher pays me, life is good. And it didn't take long for me to realize that was very naive thinking on my part.
Does anyone else want to speak to that question? Seeking out writing groups outside your genre? You're muted, Teresa.
I did Romance Writers of America. That was very good.
We have another question here from the chat. Has group feedback ever made you rethink a plot point or a character's traits?
Yes, yes. One of the best one. I was writing what became my novel, Evil Ways. I was writing it, and I was reading it in the class. And there's a scene pretty early in. The main characters, just the protagonist, are two brothers, and they haven't seen each other for a while. And I wrote this scene where they're reunited after a few years apart, and they're not the closest. They're not really close, but they're trying to get there. And so I wrote this whole scene with them coming together for the first time. It's just little introduction. It's more character stuff than moving the plot at this point, just because I want them to meet. And when I read it to the group and shared the pages to the group, most of the feedback I got was, the only reason I know these guys are brothers is because you say in there they're brothers. They don't feel like brothers. It doesn't kind of ring true. And I got that from a few different people. So thinking on it, I went back and I realized, well, hey, I have a brother. How do my brother and I react to each other? How do we interact? How do we work together or come together? And so I gave one of the characters his personality and one of the characters my personality. And I said, okay, you walk into this room, you guys meet and go. And I could basically sit back and watch it play because I knew how we would do it. And then so I go back to the next week, do it again, and everybody's like, now we feel it because the character moments come through, and so their feedback on that helped me make those characters stronger in the book.
Yeah, if one person tells you something, you can always look at it and think maybe that's just their personal preference. If you get the same feedback from 2 or 3 or 4 people, then that's something you really need to take a look at. I can't think of any specific examples, but I have definitely made changes based on feedback from writers groups.
Yeah. You should always, the one I always am very careful to listen for is if someone goes, that didn't make sense to me. Because if it didn't make sense to one, it's a good bet I may not have explained it well, or so those are the kind of things. It's not that it was written badly. It's just maybe I need to do more to get the point across. And so that's one I always listen for. If someone's not, just if it confuses people.
Yeah.
Right, because you know everything about your story in your head, like every detail, but you have to be able to express that to other people so that they can understand it too.
Yeah, right. Because sometimes we overlook it because in our head we're filling in the blank because we know what we were thinking, but I might have left out some of it, and yeah. So.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I think receiving feedback is important, whether it's in a writing group or any setting, because I will send a manuscript out to beta readers and just kind of just fishing for something, any sort of feedback. So that's kind of, it's not really a writing group, but it's a similar principle in that I want to see if multiple people tell me the same thing. What makes sense to them, what doesn't. But receiving that and not immediately assuming that they're wrong, because I'm here to entertain the reader, even if it sounds more fun in my head. I need to consider that maybe they're right, that sort of thing.
What was the quote? I think I read David Brin, the author, made a statement one time that when someone tells you something is wrong with your story, they're almost always right. When they tell you how to fix it, they're almost always wrong. That's one thing when I'm giving advice and critique at these things, I have to remember that, I'm just seeing a part of the story. I don't know where the author is going with this. So I can say, well, this didn't make sense. This is bad syntax, or, something with this character doesn't feel right to me, but I don't know how to fix it because I don't know where the story is going to end up. And I don't know what the trajectory is. So I don't know what's in the author's head that needs to be down on the paper here and not.
Yeah, so, I would never, because I've gotten this feedback before, and I never want to give this feedback. Never start your feedback. Well, if I was writing this, because even though you're giving critique, that author still has their voice, and the last thing I would want to do is someone telling them, giving critique, is try to stifle their or change them to make them sound like me. It's still your story. Here's just what I thought. And but yeah, if you come from a place of help, I think it gets taken that way. They realize you're not crapping on their story. You're really trying to be helpful.
And sometimes you have to know when to stick up for your story.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people give me crazy advice. I had one lady tell me, you need to change the main character's name because a niece sounds too much like anus, and people will think anus, and it won't be good. And I'm like, and told me an editor will not buy the story. And I'm like, well, I have 3 published stories with that character, so I don't think that's a problem. But
except whatever people tell you, you need to pick out what works for you.
Right.
Shed the rest, just smile and nod and say thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, because sometimes, and even in terms of sometimes with edits, an editor or someone reading it may say, well, why are you having this part be a little bit of a mystery? I think everybody knows what you're doing. But yeah, you may want to wait till you may be waiting till later for that reveal. Let them and let the audience feel like they're really smart. They figured it out beforehand. But a lot of times it's the pacing. And you're right, like Jared mentioned, you're only reading them a little bit at a time. You're not reading them the whole novel. So yeah, so there are times where you have to, you thank them for the feedback, but then you go with your gut and make sure, yeah.
Well, and of course, in a writer's group, one thing that, and in the one I'm in now, one thing we keep reminding ourselves verbally is that we're all writers reading as writers, and we're used to looking at stories and dissecting them and tearing apart and the mechanics, and we can see all the wheels going, whereas the casual reader is not going to, is not automatically going to spot Chekhov's gun on the mantle. It's just, okay, there's a gun on the mantle. We don't know, that has to come out in Act 3 and someone's going to get shot. But as writers, we know some of the rules and the forms and the tropes more so than the casual person reading our books will be. So we need to write for the reader, not write for other writers.
Right.
I think some of you were in the other panel earlier this morning when I spoke about Brandon Sanderson's course at BYU. There's several fascinating things he talks about, but one of them is writing groups. He's big on that. He extols the value of it. Actually, if you're enrolled in his course, you're actually sitting there on campus. Some of them are selected to be in a writing group with Brandon. So, well, that's incredibly cool. Nice, even if it's only for a semester. But he talks about kind of a little bit what we were saying, receiving criticism. But he's still in a writing group himself all these years later, mostly with the same people that he was with 20 years later. And what I took from that is, if someone who is that well established and wealthy still needs a writing group, needs the feedback, and still needs criticism and critique from people he trusts, well, I probably need it too.
Mm-hmm. Plus, it helps keep you motivated too. You want to bring something new to the group each week, or you want to, when you guys are talking about, people are together talking about how's the book coming. If you say I haven't written anything in a week, you'll feel, I know I would feel awful in a group if I didn't write anything this week. It's like, but I do, yeah. I find that being around those other creative people motivates me to help keep me going, to keep me on those days where I don't feel like writing, knowing I still need to get it done. That helps.
Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I attended the Ann Crispin writing group, which you were part of from Dragon Con, that whole thing. I got to sit in on one else. And I was told that among y'all, anyone who had not submitted at least one story to a publisher in the previous year by Dragon Con had to wear a corset.
We did that for a few years. We did. It was an encouragement. We had a particular writer, author, who wrote beautiful fantasy, some of the best stuff, but she would not submit. She was never finished with it, and she wouldn't submit. And so when we did that about writing wearing the corset, she finally submitted something. But then the next year she had to wear a corset. She went to the guy that does Writers of the Future.
Oh, L. Ron Hubbard, yeah.
Who?
That was founded by L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
It's still run by
not L. Ron Hubbard, but the one that's over it now.
Okay.
One of the big editors. He does a big workshop, and she went to that, and he loved her work and asked her to get in contact with him. He wanted to help her get it published, but then she got nervous and never followed through with it. And I was like, I would fall on my knees for that opportunity.
It's tragic.
Well, that's the problem. Some authors are the worst critics of their own work. I mean,
Yeah.
even our godfather, J.R. Tolkien, only published 2 fantasy novels in his life, which he rewrote ad nauseum before he let the publisher see them.
The imposter syndrome, and that's something that all writers can relate to, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have that thought every time I finish something and send it off to an editor. It's like, will this be the one where they realize I don't know what the hell I'm doing?
The publisher's probably thinking, are you making us money? Then you're doing it.
That was me when I sent off. I had done my novel at Nanowrimo. It was a mess. I mean, I was like, should I even spend time fixing this? And I said, I know what I'll do. I'll pick a press a publisher that's kind of small, but not, too small. And I'll just send it, and because they're more likely to give me a little feedback. And she wanted it. And then I had to start and it took months and months to get that into any kind of publishable shape. But you never know. They were able to see something in that story that was buried in all the mess.
I was at a conference once where a panel of agents, they were reading out some submissions from the audience that had been given to them ahead of time, but they also, and they gave commentary on critique on the works. But one of the things that they said in their talk is, at least in their personal experience, I don't know how widespread this is, of the people that had submitted work to agents, and the agent reads a little bit of it, likes it, and they say, okay, give me some more, give me something to work with so I can decide whether I'm going to work with you or not. They said more than half of those people never get back to them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I mean, every agent's experience, but
yeah, I have some publishers that I've worked with that have said similar things. I think it's a thing where some people are so used to getting the first 3 chapters right to submit that, and they've been doing that so long that they're not really sure what to do next when they do get asked for more, because I think it kind of hiccups the process you've been in. I know for years, I started out doing comics before I moved into prose. And for years, I was writing and submitting, comic scripts, and we would do, get with the artist and you do 3 or 4 pages. And for the first time I was ever hired professionally to write one, I was so used to doing 5 pages and stopping that it took me a bit to get into doing a whole 22-page script. So I think sometimes it just we get in our own heads and that sort of thing happens. But yeah, there's a lot of a publisher, a friend of mine, he does a lot of conventions and he'll have people, they mail him stuff or they meet him at conventions and he'll say, yeah, we want to see more. And the same thing, I think it's about the same, about half of them and he never hears from again. So.
I guess
And
that
I think
segues.
that's
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that kind of segues into, we talk about writing groups. Another thing you have to think about, besides from the next level up from your local writing group, is the conference and the convention you go to. And, and if you want to be serious as a writer, you can't just go as a spectator. You have to go as a participant and use this as a chance to network and talk to people and get noticed, and don't necessarily stalk the other agents and editors who are there, but, at least screw up the guts to go say hi and, maybe make a connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in some cases, a conference, it does feel like the next step up. I mean, it's, you're there and, it's assumed that if you're going to a writer's conference that it's not a hobby for you anymore, that you're not just writing for a hobby, you actually are looking to do more. And yeah, there are great places to get that feedback, to get that. I think most conferences do the thing where you can send in the pitch to the agent or the first few chapters to an editor and you pay a little fee and you get 10, 15 minutes one-on-one time with them. And those can be pretty, excellent opportunities for you to not only to show your work to an editor or an agent, but to get feedback from them that might help you as even if they pass on your work, you get feedback from the people you're actually trying to sell to, that can help you make your next pitch better.
I know in the Dragon Con Writers Group, we would have to write pitches, and we would look at those too. And then we would go to I've gone to the groups where the editor would say, okay, this is where I stopped. I read this far and this is where I stopped. And you would know, okay, is this good? Is it? And if you kept them reading, it was good. And it was like, they stopped pretty quickly.
Yeah, I've got some, I know some that will give you you got the opening couple of sentences, and if you haven't grabbed them, they're done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a book. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a book that was required reading for Ann Crispin's workshop when she was doing a Con called The First 5 Pages, about all the mistakes you can make in those first 5 pages that you're going to show to someone. And then it also makes a point in the book that if you don't make any of these mistakes and have the perfect first 5 pages, then you've really irritated the agent, because now they have to read the rest of your stuff. And then you're in real trouble. I forget the author of that book, but Google it. I'm sorry, I cut Teresa off with that. So
I was going to say, mention the first 5 pages.
Oh, okay.
I have a copy or two.
So I guess we have about 5 minutes left. Do any of you guys want to mention some of the groups that you're in, if you're looking for people or groups that are looking for? If you guys want to throw some of those out.
We've already talked about the Write Club, which is at the Hoover Library. They'll be meeting, I think, with over Zoom in August, and then in September is the flash fiction reading event, which I'm going to be doing. And here in Tuscaloosa, we have the Tuscaloosa Writers and Illustrators Guild. I'm not sure. I don't believe there's probably some connected to the college, but I'm not familiar with those.
Like I said, right now I'm part of the Decatur Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Scribes, or some combination of those words. You can find us on Meetup in the Atlanta, Georgia area. We have one group of us meets every other Wednesday. There's also a group that meets every other Saturday. I can't speak to the Saturday group, but the Wednesday group, we have a core group of about 8 people who show up every week, which means we usually have a couple extra seats if anyone wants to come sit in and submit and see what we do. Of course, online you don't necessarily have to be in the Atlanta area, but once we start meeting in pubs again, if we do, that may be a limiting factor. But
I just see that the Right Club will meet August 29th at 10:30 via Zoom. So
okay,
Cool.
there's that.
I'm not a member of any at the moment, but I do know of a few around. I know in Atlanta, there's also Metro Atlanta Geeks has a writers group. Metro Atlanta Geeks does a bunch of functions locally, and I know they have a writers group. And I'm not sure how often they meet, but yeah, meetup. You can find a lot of groups that way, and I know there's a couple. I live close to Athens, Georgia, so I know there's a couple that meet from close to the college or near the college. So.
okay. And also, I'll just shout out, because I don't ever stop proselytizing for this, but if you're a newbie writer wanting to contact and just get some encouragement, and we're online, when it comes around to November, or actually October, sign up for National Novel Writing Month and meet some friends on NaNoWriMo and actually like interact and communicate with people, and you'll find us a great experience.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thank you to our panelists today for talking about writing groups and, giving a special plug for the Right Club. Jared, I had totally forgotten that you were the one that started that. Of course,
It's ages ago. It's centuries
I was about to
ago.
say, I wasn't here at the time, but it's definitely still very well attended. So I guess thank you for that. So I think that was our last writing panel for the fest. So I hope everyone who attended enjoyed it. All of them will be available on YouTube sometime next week. They'll have the chats included, so you can pull any pertinent links from there. And other than that, it was so good to see all of you, even virtually, and thank you for presenting and attending.
Thank you for having this. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Great, I'm
Yes.
glad. All right, thank you. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Hi.